We understand that this body of work, Sidewalk Eastman, was produced many years ago. Can you tell us the story behind, please?
Okay, because my practice actually revolves around looking at the things that people collect and the space that they build around them, and how this in turn affects the way a person behaves or how the person reacts to the space around them. So for this particular piece of work, me being just like 75% of other Singaporeans in Singapore, we all live in what we call the Housing Development Board apartments. And these apartments are spaces that we own after we buy them. So in this body of work for Sidewalk Eastman, we are looking at the objects that's been placed outside the houses where legally and rightfully us as the homeowners, we don't own the space. So this looks at this blurring of the private and the public space, and how the self is actually presented in a public area. In addition to that, I think the idea of collection, the idea of collecting things is very interesting for me, because this to me is a form of portraiture. By looking at the things that we possess and the things that we accumulate, this over time slowly reveals, in my personal opinion, the personal stories that everybody has, instead of using a more conventional approach of doing a straight-on portraiture of a person to tell each individual story. Yeah.
And then we learned that for this show you have produced some new pieces for Thailand. We are really thankful. But may we ask, after several years under the same concept, do you find any changes from the former version to the current version?
There will be some changes in terms of the things that are being placed outside the houses, because earlier in the series the images were all taken in around 2009 and 2010, and then I do notice a shift in the kind of things that people are putting outside the houses, in terms of how consumer objects, in terms of the design and the way they have evolved. We do see a shift in the things that's being placed outside the houses, and I do notice a more apparent display of plants outside the houses. We have a lot more houses that start to recreate this environment that the earlier Singaporeans used to experience in the early 1950s to the early to 1970s, where they were all staying in villages where we call kampong. And back then Singaporeans had a lot of access to the nature, whereas right now Singaporeans are trying to revive and to have this new sensory and a new experience of how they can be closer to nature. So I guess that's why we do see a lot of more Singaporeans putting potted plants outside their houses. Yeah.
This is a top-up question from me actually. First, like I'm quite curious all the time whether when you place one work in some other countries, like what we are doing with your works now, by showing the Sidewalk Eastman in Bangkok. How do you think in terms of the idea of the context, whether it's create some new kind of context or any kind of interrupting of what you have been doing or not?
In fact, when I was just talking about the idea of having being closer to nature in a lot of cities, I do notice, even for when during my time in London, the English do like to purchase potted plants as well as. And I do notice that even for my short trip here in Bangkok, I do see the local people being very attracted to this new form of controlled nature. When we look at desert plants or cactuses or all the small little potted plants that the local people here in Thailand are very fascinated and very interested in. So I think I wouldn't say that there's too much of a disparity between all the different nationalities when it comes to this aspect of the idea of collection, and how we all try to attempt to be closer back to the nature, and then in the process we try to recreate one.
Thank you so.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much. Thanks very much. I see you soon.